Welcome to the premiere episode of Portaholics. For a refresher to those that missed my intro article on Examiner, Portaholics is a show and article series dedicated to analyzing the release history of a single game. In the end, I will try to give my opinion on which is the definitive version, which you should buy, try, whatever. To start, let's take a look at Resident Evil's 20-year history, and we will begin with Resident Evil on PS1. As I covered in my Resident Evil retrospective, the original Resident Evil was released in the US on March 30th, 1996 for the PlayStation 1. Its first port, Resident Evil The Director's Cut, launched on September 30th, 1997 for the PS1. It graphically looked the same, but it did feature several changes. An arrange mode was added that switched items and enemies around, as well as give characters new costumes. The handgun was improved, allowing for critical hits at random. There was also a beginner's mode to help ease new players in. Finally, cut content from the original release was uncensored in this version, except for the beginning full motion video. There were two other ports based off of the director's cut, but as I have not been able to play them myself, I decided to negate a deeper investigation. However, I will say that there was a Sega Saturn and PC version, each containing exclusive content not found in any of the PS1 versions. Apparently, as far as I've researched. Now, the PC version launched alongside the PS1, while the Sega Saturn copy released a month earlier on August 31st, 1997. A third edition, Resident Evil The Director's Cut DualShock version, launched on September 14th, 1998 for the PS1. As the name suggests, it added support for the PlayStation's new DualShock controller. The soundtrack was also redone. Everything else from the Director's Cut remained unaltered. Here's where things start to get a bit crazy and in the gray in terms of legality. In collaboration with a third party, HotGen, Capcom was working on a Game Boy Color port of the original PS1 release of Resident Evil. It was slated to release in 1999, but the project was ultimately canned. Except for screenshots, it never saw the light of day until a prototype ROM was released online in 2012. While it's a primitive port to an inferior system, the work done is impressive for the Game Boy Color, to say the least. I mean, look at it! It really does look like a Game Boy Color version of Resident Evil. Quite impressive indeed, and I love finding versions like this out there. I think more companies should release prototype ROMs. Even though it wasn't Capcom, it was a guy that somehow came across it. Anyway, let's move on. The next official release of Resident Evil came in the form of a complete remake via the GameCube. It launched on April 30th, 2002 in North America. This remake is considered a separate game in the series by some, as it overhauls much of the game's storyline, graphics, mechanics, and so forth, while retaining the same identity at its core, a survival horror game centered around police fighting zombies in an abandoned mansion. To give one example of a change, Crimson Heads were zombies that were stronger, faster, and had to be killed with fire, otherwise they could resurrect themselves at random. This remake was later ported to the Nintendo Wii, Resident Evil Archives Resident Evil, on June 23, 2009. Nothing was changed other than allowing for Wii controls to be utilized. Last year, it was also ported to the PC, PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One on January 20th, 2015. The graphics were improved along with a few other extras, but nothing huge. The most notable change was adding an option for full analog support, negating tank controls for the very first time. In the original Resident Evil, that is to say. And now we come to the last version, with Deadly Silence, released on the Nintendo DS on February 7th, 2006. It features an approximate graphical mirroring of the original PS1 release, but with a bit higher resolution. It features touch controls for normal play, along with segments needed for actual touch. The top screen is dedicated to the map, whereas the bottom is for the core gameplay. It also includes a rebirth mode, which is a harder version containing more enemies and new puzzles that utilize the stylus more. Finally, it includes the only multiplayer the original game has ever received, for local connections only via the DS's wireless. Alright, so with all that said, what is the best version of Resident Evil 1? For my money, I gotta say it's the remake released last year on PS4. The tweaks added to an already amazing game just makes it even more shiny and a masterpiece. So, it is a lot easier to get, I should say, than the GameCube version too. So that is the version. If you've never played Resident Evil in the classic sense, this is the one to get. And that's all I gotta say for this edition of Portaholics.